Shalom and welcome to AHAVA.org. My name is Jacob. I'm just going to show you how to begin to play the Torah Targum game. The easiest way is to head to AHAVA.org and immediately click the play button. This will bring you to the actual game extension, TorahTargum.AHAVA.org. And so if you haven't signed up yet, there's going to be a little sign up that takes 45 seconds roughly. But once you're logged in, you'll be able to make a selection. And with purchasing a $5 a month membership, you'll be able to access the entire Tanakh in Ketav Ashurit in the correct order and be able to play the Torah Targum game. Assuming that you would sign up for the first time, always go over to the Torah books and just select Beresheath. Once it loads, then you can begin to play. This is the goal of how it's going to look, but we will demonstrate Bezrat Hashem how to play from the very beginning. So I'm just going to reset everything to how you would see it exactly when you get the game. So also you'll have an option to select your Ketav Ashurit, that's number 1. So it initially starts with this Ketav Ashurit font by Reb Martin Mendelsberg, verified with Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, Shlita, may God, bless them, protect them and everything. And here is the Ketav Ashurit font that, Baruch Hashem, that we have been working on, based on Hagaon Rav Eliezer Adam Shlita, the founder of Mechon Melechet Shamayim. And this is trying to perfect the shapes so that you could really see every teaching of the Aleph Bet, especially in the basic lesson that you can access here, as to what the Aleph Bet depict on a basic level, directly as the children used to learn in the time of the sages, or really as we received it at Har Sinai, Bezrat Hashem. The very first step to the Torah is to acquire the keys to the Torah. And so that you'll have there. And the game is very simple, essentially to make room for the Targum and then to line them up. And so you could begin by breaking down verses. And a verse is signified by the end of, with those 2 dots. A long verse that you could break it in half as well at the etnachta symbol, which essentially does break a verse in half. You could also delete extra titles because we have the title here. And if you notice, this bet of Beresheath has 4 crowns because Rav Avraham Kalimi via Rav Moshe Shapira via Masechet Sofrim teach us that the bet of Beresheath is not only enlarged on an authentic Torah scroll, it also has 4 crowns. And Rashi writes, Rav Zamir Cohen Shlita quotes that Rashi writes by the symbol Kuf, where the Kuf has 1 slanting crown towards the Resh, but the crown is in the shape of the Od Zayin. So essentially, you are crowned, so the Od Zayin is like a crown, and so the bet, it has 4 tagin, or crowns, and there might be nuances between them, I'm not sure. So anyway, just to copy and paste it into here, and then you could click the big Ot button, which would just simply make the symbol appear bigger as it would on an authentic Torah scroll. And so already we're seeing the Aleph Bet in their true forms, and we're seeing the Nekudot, which is obviously not on an authentic scroll. The point is, look how impossible a Torah scroll is to read without the sages, which is why the sages were forced to translate it, because it's impossible to read it without the sages who transmit from Moshe how to read a single symbol, a single word, and all those kinds of things. So here we're getting the benefit of seeing the real Aleph Bet, and we're seeing the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Mesorah, the Nekudot, the vowelization, the punctuation, the breaks, nuances, connections, like everything. That's discussed in depth, Bezrat Hashem, in Sefer HaTig'an, essentially it's seemingly like an introduction to the Torah by Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the Yemenite manuscripts preserve it in the very beginning, before the whole Tanakh. They have that little short introduction to biblical Hebrew and the rules of the Te'amim and everything like that. It really seems like that's what it is. So once you begin to create space like this, again, breaking a verse in half, we're also skimming it. We're just not even, you don't even have to really be able to read, to be able to do this. You find the actual symbols, obviously. It's better once you know how to read. So once we set it up like this and we have the space created, which means we're leaving this blank line in between every line of the Torah, this is where the Targum text will appear. And so once you're ready to do that, you can go through the whole Parsha, and this goes through the Parsha quickly, just breaking down everything line by line. So you have, every line has like a phrase or a bit of information, and this is where you can choose to break it down further, depending on your how you like to do it, or whatever it is, whatever makes it easier to learn is essentially the key. And so once you're ready, you could turn on the Targum layer, and there are shortcuts so that you could switch between layers easily by pressing the button next to the number 1. Just to the left of the 1 is this button with a I don't even know what that symbol is, but there's like the sine wave or squiggly line. But once you press it, it'll cycle between the layers. So now that the active layer is going to be displayed with the pink text, so you can just delete that and then begin to play the game. Because you'll have the option also that you'll be able to renumber according to the Sidrei HaTorah, the verses and everything like that. So you'll have that information in the Torah text, so you might not need the actual thing. But again, however best works for every single person. And so the way to begin is you click all the way at the beginning before the very first word of Targum. And we're now going to add spaces and push the text along. And like this will line up the text and begin to connect the Aramaic to the Torah and begin to understand Aramaic, essentially. And what Aramaic is really, not how it's really taught in the world is what it is, but what it is really. But all that, no spoilers, essentially. We're beginning fresh. So I like to just hit tab to like jump extra spaces, if you will. And once you get near the word, then begin using the space bar to just perfectly lock it in place. And once you're in the middle of the text, I usually use space bar, but again, however you're comfortable, if you want to. Because sometimes tab, when you're backspacing or whatever, it could shift, and so the space bar allows like more solid placement of the word directly under. Sorry, just delete that. Yeah, extra things, right? Okay. And so this is now beginning to line up almost word for... This one is word for word, and we'll see any things that we could come across as we begin to learn Targum. And initially, this is just you're lining it up. And right now, how we're understanding it is that this is simply how you say this in Aramaic, is how we're taught what Targum is. Is simply, there's a language called Aramaic, and this is how you speak Aramaic, and it's a word-for-word translation of the Torah into Aramaic. That's essentially how it's taught. And who wrote it down? Onkelos, or who said it? Onkelos. And who's Onkelos? Which is a question that would lead you to really appreciating who Onkelos is in his own right. But the fact that the Targum, Onkelos didn't make up the Targum. He didn't write a Perush called the Targum on the Torah, or a translation of his own will or mind. This is Onkelos, who was transcribing the words of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua, who ensured and transmitted to Am Yisrael, ensured that the meaning of the words is transmitted. Because again, the Torah is impossible to read. How much more so impossible to understand? You can't even read the language. Forget about understanding it even. You can't even read the words. You can't even understand the concepts that are being conveyed here. So that is what Onkelos wanted to make sure. The nekudot and vowelization, punctuation teaches you how to read the words, sound them out, how to pause and connect certain words and break up certain words and emphasize certain words and all those kinds of things. And then you have the meaning of the words and the partner to the text itself, the challenger, the ezer kenegdo, the helper against him. That's really what the Targum is, that as we'll see. But initially, you begin the year, 1 year can be just going through Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum every week, doing a little bit of an aliyah. The parsha is split into 7 aliyot on Shabbats and all these kinds of things. So you could do it before in the week, 7 times. You'd maybe do 2 on Yom HaShishi. So however you want to break up the thing, but as you go through and break up the text one time, just the Mikra, going through and really just breaking down all the text, that's going through the Mikra once. And then going through the Targum once. As you're going through the Targum, you're already going through the Mikra, so it literally already fulfills Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum. Or when you then, B'ezrat Hashem, would hear it on Shabbat, that would fulfill the second Mikra, and now you're hearing it and understanding, what's going on better than before, of course, because what the Targum is really, where we'll get into coloring the Targum and all those kinds of things. But initially, how it all begins is it begins simply by lining them up, and that's the simplest way. And as you go through the Torah in this fashion, then you'll get to the why colors then could apply and how to use them and understand really the nuances of Targum. It's very easy, as will be explained B'ezrat Hashem, but here we're just giving a general layout of the land, doing at least 1 or 2 verses, possibly the Aliyah, but we'll see. So here is an interesting concept where we run across something going on. We have the word min, we have the word kodam, like the word kodem, and then we have Hashem's name. So it's as if that there's these 2 extra words seemingly in the Targum, which is an interesting concept. What's going on? So in order, and then initially maybe this is how to break it up, that you would then want to make space, because Hashem's name, as we saw up here, Hashem's name is, these 2 yuds. We'll see the manuscript. It will be 3 yuds, but we'll see why. But we're again beginning initially. Beruach Elokim. So it seems that Hashem's name lines up here, and Rucha and Ruach, obviously, Ruach, the same words are here. So we're having 2 extra words. So we would switch into the Mikra layer, click inside, and make, a little bit of space to accompany the extra, seemingly, words here, or what's being added here. So this might be already an instance where somebody would want to highlight initially to bold it, but there's many nuances, and so colors fit better or better used to really highlight all the different things going on. So min kodam is already, there's something going on here. So if you want to highlight it, whatever color you want as well. But we followed the colors based on Hagaon Rab Zamir Cohen Shlita Hashem Yishmereu V'chayehu Kol Mishpachto. Basically, that explaining its, the secrets of colors was the name of the lesson, essentially. Anyway, beyond here right now, but the colors, the color of Hod, which is to make known, which is pink, so that's why, or magenta, as I was told to say. So, min kodam Hashem, so from before Hashem, we'll see. So this is one instance of, going through it, but in the meantime, we'll leave it without the colors. We'll come back around and show what to do. Again, this could be the first year going through the Torah. Every week, by doing this activity, you're already lining up, and as you're going through, you're learning Aramit, what Aramit is, and all these kinds of things. Beruach Elokim merachefet, menashevet is even in modern Hebrew, and you're hearing the sources of words in all languages, but that's again beyond right now. But that's again what you're getting is the most It's trying to sharpen you in every possible regard, really. With the Torah, it's the source of everything, all the information that's needed, teaches you how to think and everything. It's and just the amazing content in itself, and yeah. So here we're getting an idea of how it's already starting to look. So right, we're hitting tab. You already probably got it. I could have stopped already after the first verse, so let's just get to the end. Vayar Elokim v'haza Hashem. What's the difference? Because later on we'll see in Sefer Yeshaya, Chazon Yeshayahu. There's a word Chazon really in Lashon HaKodesh, seemingly in the Torah text, in the Tanakh text. So what is the difference between Vayar and V'haza? And that's again that concept of what the Targum really is. Ezer kenegdo, a helper against him. Sometimes a helper by explaining a very cryptic word, and sometimes kenegdo by challenging seemingly the Torah word, giving this other word that seemingly exists, but really there are no synonyms in biblical Hebrew. And so, as the principal Rav Zamir Kohenshita and Rabbi Rosenthaler via the Malbim, Alav Shalom, and explaining, that this concept that in biblical Hebrew there's no such thing as a synonym. The fact that you're seeing a different word means it has its own unique meaning. And it's an amazing teaching. There's no concept like that in other things, really. I don't know, but even still, it's just a unique feature. If English doesn't have that, for example. You could say something so many different ways, but everything is like meaningless, really. Nobody could break down to an actual definition. Everyone just keeps giving you synonyms, and no one ever explains the thing itself. And it's a problem, when you need to understand exactly what does this word mean and how is it different than this other word. So that's what you get when you are occupied, Bezrat Hashem, with the Targum. And so finally, finishing here, the first day, Baruch Hashem, it says, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Ehad. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. So it says, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Ehad. And it was the evening where Erev, which has to do with mixture, as Professor Gerald Schroeder, Shlita explains, that in Rav Moshe Shapira, that the light is going away and everything starts to get, as it gets darker, things start to blur together, and the light and darkness together is Erev. That's the mixture. Vayhi Boker, and then it was translated as the light of the morning, dawn. But Boker has to do with clarity and things like that, apparently. So we'll see. But it says Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Echad, 1 day. Okay, and here you have a cool concept that the sages transmit. Again, the concept that as you're learning, make tricks in mnemonics. But basically, the word Erev, the Targum is Remash, which the Torah uses coming up. The Remasim are creepy crawly bugs, and creepy crawly bugs come out at night. And Vayhi Boker is Tzfar, Otiyot, Tzipor, the language of birds. I mean, the word which has the word Tzipor, which is a bird, and basically the birds start chirping exactly at dawn, every day without fail. Baruch Hashem. So Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Ehad. 1 day. So it's very easy, pretty much. Here we saw the concept of that could be like extra words seemingly here. And now let's talk about the next level after you can go through, again, the entire Torah Mikra one time by just breaking down the verses and breaking them down phrase by phrase, if you want to break it up. However best works for every person, is the key. And obviously what fits and could look nicer visually as well. But that's up to you. Again, that could be very subjective and things like that. All right. Kol tuv.